Hi everyone, welcome to my channel, Tomorrow Revenge, where you can witness the power of women. Please follow us to hear today's story. Take that filthy uniform off outside, my sister said, her voice sharp enough to cut through the reinforced steel door of the bunker. I don't want whatever government propaganda you're carrying in here. I stood in the doorway, the weight of 48 straight hours at the Homeland Security Field Office still pressing down on my shoulders. The air in the private safety bunker was cool, filtered, and smelled faintly of antiseptic, a stark contrast to the sweat and fear-soaked air I'd been breathing downtown. I looked at Chloe, my 24-year-old sister, her arms crossed over a threadbare sweatshirt that read, "Resist" in faded letters. Her blonde hair, the same shade as mine, but chopped short and uneven, stood out against the dull, gray walls. "It's not filthy, Chloe," I said, my voice weary, "and it's not propaganda. It's my job. Your job." She spat the word like it was poison. "Your job is propping up a system that's killing people like Mom. That killed Dad." Our mother lay on a medical cot in the corner, her breathing shallow but steady. The cancer had taken so much from her already. Her strength, her hair, the light in her eyes. But it hadn't taken her life. Not yet. The government healthcare plan I'd fought to get her on was the only reason she could afford the treatments. Chloe either didn't know that or chose to ignore it. "Dad died a hero on September 11th, I said, the old anger rising in my chest. "He ran into the towers when everyone else was running out. He wasn't killed by the system. He was killed by terrorists. And now you work for the people who used his death as an excuse to strip away our rights." Chloe's voice rose, echoing in the confined space. "Surveillance, indefinite detention, wars that never end. You're part of the machine, Ivy, just a cog." I unzipped my jacket, the DHS seal glaring in the bunker's sterile light. I wanted to tell her about the 16-hour days, analyzing threat patterns, the intercepted plots we'd stopped, the lives saved. I wanted to tell her about the child trafficking ring we'd dismantled just last month, or the domestic terror cell we'd caught planning to bomb a school. But I knew it wouldn't matter. To Chloe, the badge itself was the enemy. "I'm not having this argument again," I said, hanging the jacket on a hook by the door. "I've been awake for 2 days straight. I need sleep, not a lecture. Of course, the loyal government drone needs her rest, so she can go back to oppressing the masses tomorrow. Chloe, enough." Our mother's voice was weak but firm. "Your sister just got home. Let her breathe." Chloe shot me one last glare before turning to tend to Mom. I walked to the small kitchenette and poured a glass of water, my hands trembling slightly from exhaustion and suppressed rage. Home. This wasn't home. Home had been a brownstone in Brooklyn, with Dad's laugh filling the halls and Mom's garden in the backyard. Home had been Chloe and I sharing a room, staying up late talking about our futures. That home died with Dad, and the cancer had burned what was left to ashes. "How is she?" I asked quietly when Chloe joined me at the counter. "The same." Chloe wouldn't look at me. "The new medication makes her nauseous, but she says the pain is better." "Good." I sipped the water. "I spoke to her doctor. He says if she stabilizes, there's a trial at NIH she might qualify for." "Oh, more government experiments? How wonderful." "It's a cutting-edge immunotherapy trial, Chloe. It could save her life. Or it could kill her faster. We don't know. Because the big pharmaceutical companies won't release their data. Because profit matters more than people." I closed my eyes. Not everything is a conspiracy. And not everyone in a uniform is a hero. She finally looked at me, her blue eyes so like Dad's, full of contempt. "Some of them are just following orders." The words hung between us, heavy with history and hurt. I thought of Dad's helmet, still sitting in a box in my apartment downtown. The helmet he'd worn when he'd run into the North Tower. The helmet that had been found in the rubble. The face shield melted. The leather straps burned away. He'd been just following orders too. The order to save lives. "I might be getting called up," I said, the words out before I could stop them. Chloe froze. "Called up? What does that mean?" "You're being deployed." "Not exactly." I rubbed my temples. "There's something happening. I can't talk about it, but if I get the call, I'll have to go, and I might be gone for a while." "Of course you will." Chloe's laugh was bitter because when the Pentagon calls, little soldiers come running. What is it this time? Another illegal surveillance program? Rendition? Assassination? I'm an analyst. Chloe, I look at data. I don't kill people. You just tell other people where to aim. She shook her head. You know, for years after Dad died, I wanted to be just like you. My big sister. So strong. So sure of herself. You never cried. You just put on that uniform and went to work. I thought it was strength. Now I realize it's just brainwashing. The hurt hit me like a physical blow. I remembered Chloe at 16, wearing one of my old sweaters that drowned her small frame, crying in my arms after a nightmare about Dad. I remembered promising her I'd always protect her. Now she looked at me like I was the monster in her dreams. I'm doing what I think is right, I said quietly. No, Chloe said, you're doing what you're told. There's a difference. My encrypted phone vibrated in my pocket. Then, a specific, urgent pattern I'd been dreading. I pulled it out, the screen glowing with a single line of text. Report to Pentagon briefing room, Delta, immediately. Authorization code, Gamma 79er. Chloe saw my face change. What is it? I have to go, I said, already moving toward the door, grabbing my jacket. Now, you just got here. It's the call. I shoved my arms into the sleeves, the familiar weight of the uniform settling around me like armor, or like a shroud. I couldn't tell anymore. Ivy, wait. For the first time, there was something other than anger in Chloe's voice. Fear. What's going on? Tell me. I looked at her, at our mother, sleeping fitfully on the cot, at this sterile, safe, suffocating bunker. I don't know, I said honestly, but if I don't come back, don't you dare. Chloe cut me off, her eyes shining. Don't you dare say goodbye like that. Take care of Mom, I said instead. Then I opened the bunker door and stepped back out into the world, leaving my sister and whatever was left of my old life behind. The drive to D.C. was a blur of dark highways and darker thoughts. I kept seeing Chloe's face, the contempt in her eyes, the fear underneath it. I thought about Dad, about the last time I'd seen him, pulling on his turnout coat, smiling at me over his shoulder. Hold down the fort. Kiddo, he'd said. Then he'd climbed onto the truck and driven toward the smoke rising over Manhattan. I'd been 12. Chloe had been 8. We'd watched from the roof of our building as the first tower fell. Then the second. Mom had screamed, a sound I still heard in my nightmares. We never found his body, just the helmet. At 18, I joined the army. At 22, I'd moved to intelligence. At 26, I'd joined Homeland Security. I'd told myself it was to protect people, to make sure no other little girls lost their fathers to terrorists. But maybe Chloe was right. Maybe I was just following orders. Maybe I'd traded one uniform for another, thinking I was choosing something different, when really I was just walking in Dad's footsteps toward my own collapse. The Pentagon loomed ahead, lit up against the night sky like a fortress. My security clearance got me through the gates. My badge got me through the doors. And the grim expression on my face got me through the checkpoints. Without small talk, the halls were mostly empty at this hour, just the occasional officer or janitor. My footsteps echoed on the polished floors. Briefing room Delta was in the innermost ring, accessible only to those with gamma level clearance or higher. I'd been here once before for a counter-bioterrorism workshop. The room was windowless, soundproofed, with a large oval table and screens covering every wall. When I entered, 2 people were already there. The first was General Alan Brennan, my direct superior at DHS, in his late 50s, with a buzz cut gone mostly gray and a posture that suggested he'd swallowed a steel rod. Brennan was a legend in intelligence circles. He'd served in the Gulf War, hunted terrorists in the mountains of Afghanistan, and now ran some of the most sensitive operations in the homeland. He nodded to me as I entered, his expression unreadable. The other person was a woman I didn't recognize. She looked to be in her 40s, with severe black hair pulled into a tight bun and glasses that reflected the light from the screens. She wore a lab coat over a sensible pantsuit, and she didn't look up from the tablet in her hands as I entered. Agent Carter, Brennan said. Glad you could join us on such short notice. Sir, I said, standing at attention. You said it was urgent. It is. He gestured to the woman. This is Dr. Eleanor Watson. She's the head of Project Minotaur at DARPA. DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, the people who brought you the internet, GPS, and stealth technology, and, according to rumors I'd heard but never confirmed, some less savory innovations. Doctor, I said. Dr. Watson finally looked up, her eyes scanning me as if I were a specimen under a microscope. Agent Carter, I've read your file. Top of your class at Quantico, exceptional analytical skills, fluency in 3 languages, and a noted ability to maintain cover in high-stress situations. Also, a personal motivation rooted in familial loss. Interesting. I didn't like the way she said interesting. Like my father's death was a data point in a profile. What's this about? General. Brennan gestured to a chair. Sit down. Agent, this is going to take a while. I sat. Dr. Watson tapped her tablet, and the screens around the room lit up with images that made my blood run cold. The first was a satellite photo of a compound in what looked like the Syrian desert. The second was a schematic of a device I didn't recognize, all coils and canisters. The third was a mugshot of a man with dark eyes and a scar running from his hairline to his cheek. I knew that face. Farouk al-Masri, the founder and leader of New Dawn, the most brutal terrorist organization to emerge since ISIS. They'd claimed responsibility for the Berlin subway bombing last year that killed 60 people, including 12 children. New Dawn, I said. Correct, Brennan said. 6 months ago, they raided a research facility in Kazakhstan, killed everyone there, stole everything that wasn't bolted down. We thought they were after conventional weapons or chemical precursors. We were wrong. Dr. Watson took over. The facility was a joint U.S.U.K. biomedical research station, ostensibly studying zoonotic disease transmission. In reality, it was developing countermeasures for a class of pathogen we've designated A237. Pathogen? I asked. A genetically engineered virus, Dr. Watson said, her voice clinical, detached, airborne, highly contagious, with a mortality rate of approximately 80% in immunologically naive populations. The research was defensive. I assure you, we were developing vaccines, treatments, but the raw strain, the weaponized form, that's what New Dawn took. I stared at the screen, at the schematic of the device, and that is a dispersal mechanism, Brennan said grimly, small enough to fit in a backpack. Set it off in a crowded place, and within hours, thousands would be infected. Within days, hundreds of thousands. There's no vaccine available to the public. The treatments are still experimental. Why haven't I heard about this? My mind was racing, thinking of the chatter we'd been monitoring, the increased activity among extremist groups. This should be the highest priority, because it's not just New Dawn we're dealing with. Brennan interrupted. They have help inside the country. He tapped the table, and the screen changed again. Now it showed protest footage. Crowds of people marching with signs, blocking traffic, clashing with police. I recognized the slogans, the symbols, the Free Dawn movement, Chloe's group. My stomach dropped. What does this have to do with them? They're activists, not terrorists. They break windows. They don't. They're useful idiots, Brennan said bluntly. New Dawn has been funneling money to them through shell corporations and cryptocurrency for over a year, funding their protests, their legal defenses, their recruitment efforts, making them louder, more visible, more extreme. Why? I whispered, but I already knew the answer. To create cover, Dr. Watson said, and to provide boots on the ground. The Free Dawn movement has chapters in every major city. They have people who can move without suspicion, who know the layouts of public spaces, who have access to areas that would be difficult for known operatives to penetrate. No, I shook my head. Chloe, my sister, she's part of that group. She's idealistic. She's angry, but she's not a terrorist. She wouldn't. We're not saying she would, Brennan said, but his eyes were hard. We're saying she's being used. They all are. New Dawn has operatives embedded in the movement, guiding them, radicalizing them. We have intelligence suggesting that the A237 dispersal is planned for the United Nations General Assembly meeting in New York in 72 hours. Every world leader will be in one place. The symbolic impact alone. He didn't need to finish. I could imagine it. The chaos, the panic, the collapse of order, and in the aftermath, New Dawn would claim responsibility, would rise from the ashes as the new caliphate, the champions of the oppressed, and groups like Free Dawn, whether they knew it or not, would have helped make it happen. What do you need from me? I asked, my voice hollow. Infiltration, Brennan said. You have a direct in. Your sister is a rising star in the New York chapter. She trusts you, or at least, she has reason to want to trust you. You go to her. You tell her you've become disillusioned with the government. You have access to classified information. We'll provide you with authentic-looking leaks, enough to convince them you're genuine. You join the movement. You get close to the New Dawn operatives. You find out where the virus is, how they plan to deploy it, and who their American contacts are. I stared at him. You want me to spy on my sister? I want you to prevent the deaths of millions of people, Brennan corrected. Your sister is already involved. Agent, the best way to protect her is to shut this down before it happens. If we move in openly, New Dawn will scatter and we'll lose the virus, or they'll release it early. This is the only way. And if I refuse... Brennan's expression didn't change. Then you'll be detained as a material witness. Your security clearance will be revoked. Your mother's placement in the NIH trial will be reconsidered. And when the virus is released and thousands die, you'll have to live with knowing you could have stopped it. The threat hung in the air, cold and precise. They'd done their homework. They knew exactly which buttons to push. You're asking me to betray my sister, I said again, but it was useless. We all knew I didn't have a choice. I'm asking you to save her, Brennan said, and everyone else. Dr. Watson slid a folder across the table. Your cover identity, background, documents, access codes. Memorize it, then destroy it. You have 12 hours to make contact. We'll provide support from a distance, but once you're in, you're on your own. Any compromise, and we'll disavow you. I took the folder. It felt heavy as a coffin lid. One more thing, Brennan said as I stood to leave. The operation has a code name, Minos, after the king in Greek mythology who built the labyrinth to contain the monster. I looked at him. And who's the monster in this story? General. His smile was thin and without warmth. That's what you're going to find out. Agent. Dismissed. I walked out of the briefing room, the folder tucked under my arm. The halls of the Pentagon seemed to stretch on forever, a labyrinth of their own. I thought of Chloe, of the hatred in her eyes when she looked at my uniform. I thought of my mother, sleeping in her bunker, trusting the system I served to keep her alive. I thought of my father, running into the towers. I reached my car and sat behind the wheel for a long time, not moving. Then I took out my phone and pulled up the last photo I had of all of us together. It was at Coney Island, the summer before 9/11. Dad had won me a giant stuffed bear at a shooting gallery. Chloe was eating cotton candy, her face smeared with pink. Mom was laughing, her head thrown back, the sun in her hair. I traced my finger over Chloe's smile. Then I put the phone away and started the car. I had 12 hours to become someone my sister could trust, someone who hated everything I'd spent my adult life defending. The moon was high and pale in the sky as I drove back toward New York, toward the labyrinth, toward the monster waiting at its center. I didn't know yet that the monster had many faces, or that one of them was my own. The drive back to New York felt like traveling through a tunnel of my own dread. Every mile marker was a countdown. Every exit a potential escape I couldn't take. The folder on the passenger seat seemed to radiate a cold energy. I'd already memorized its contents. Ivy Carter, disillusioned DHS analyst, embittered by the death of her firefighter father at the hands of a system that exploited his heroism. Sickened by watching her mother die slowly because insurance companies valued profits over patience. Angry at a government that spied on its own people while letting real threats slip through. It was Chloe's narrative, polished and weaponized. It was my sister's deepest convictions, and I was about to wear them as a disguise. I pulled over at a rest stop outside Baltimore. The sky was beginning to lighten, a dull gray smudge on the horizon. I took out my personal phone. The the one not issued by the government, and stared at it. I needed to make the first move now, while the shock of our argument was still fresh in Chloe's mind. Authenticity required timing. My fingers trembled as I typed. Chloe, I'm sorry about earlier. You were right. About everything. I can't do this anymore. I deleted the last sentence. Too vague. I saw something today. Something I can't unsee. I need to talk to you. Somewhere safe. Not the bunker. I hit send before I could second guess myself. The message was a hook. Would she bite? 5 minutes passed, then 10. I started the car again, merging back onto the highway, my eyes constantly flicking to the phone in the cup holder. Just as the sky turned pink with dawn, it buzzed. Who is this? A chill went through me. Paranoia. She was testing me, making sure it wasn't a trap. I typed back, it's Ivy. Who else would it be? Another pause. Then, prove it. What did you give me for my 10th birthday? I almost smiled, despite everything. Our old code, from when we were kids, playing spy games. A compass. I typed. You cried because you wanted a phone. I told you a compass would always show you the way home, even when you were lost. The response came faster. Meet me at the place Dad took us for ice cream after my first solo. Noon. Come alone and lose the government tracker. The old ice cream parlor near Floyd Bennett Field. It had been abandoned for years. A good choice. Isolated. Multiple exits. Sentimental value to throw off suspicion. My little sister had learned a thing or two. I'm coming alone. Chloe, I whispered to the empty car, but I'm not who you think I am. I had 6 hours to kill. I drove to a storage unit I kept in Queens under a false name, a precaution for my early undercover days. Inside, I changed out of my uniform into jeans, a plain black t-shirt, and a worn leather jacket. I buried the DHS badge and my government phone in a false-bottomed toolbox. I kept my personal phone and the encrypted burner Brennan had provided. I looked at my reflection in the dusty mirror propped against the wall. Ivy Carter, government agent, was gone. In her place was someone harder, angrier, someone with nothing left to lose. I practiced the look in my eyes, the betrayal, the rage. It wasn't hard to summon. At 11:45, I parked a mile from the old ice cream parlor and walked the rest of the way. The building was a shell, its windows boarded up, the sign hanging by a single chain. The smell of salt and decay hung in the air. I saw her before she saw me. She was leaning against a rusted-out car, her posture tense, scanning the empty lot. She wore a dark hoodie, her hands shoved in her pockets. You're early, I said, announcing myself. She spun, her hand coming out of her pocket, not with a weapon, but with a small electronic device, a signal jammer. Had to be sure you weren't followed. Her eyes raked over me, taking in the civilian clothes. No uniform. I burned it, I said, the lie tasting like ash, figuratively. Anyway, it's in a landfill in New Jersey. She didn't smile. You said you saw something. What? No small talk, no relief that I'd come. Just straight to business. Chloe had grown up. The realization hurt more than I expected. I can't talk out here, I said, playing the part of the nervous defector. Is there somewhere we can go? Somewhere you trust. She studied me for a long moment, her gaze searching for tells. I let her see the exhaustion. The fear, at least, was real. There's a place, she said finally, but if this is a setup, Ivy, I swear to God, it's not a setup. I took a step closer, letting my voice break just a little. I need your help. Chloe, I don't know who to trust anymore. The childhood nicknamed it. Her guard slipped, just for a second, and I saw the little sister who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. Come on, she said, her voice softer. My car's over here. We drove in silence to a warehouse in Red Hook. The sign outside said Brooklyn Maritime Repairs, but the bay doors were sealed, and the only vehicles in the lot were a collection of beat-up vans and sedans. Chloe led me to a side entrance, typed a code into a keypad, and ushered me inside. The space had been converted into a combination of a community center, a workshop, and a war room. Mismatched couches were arranged around a wood-burning stove. Tables were covered with flyers, stacks of books, and electronic parts. A large chalkboard on one wall was covered in diagrams and lists, protest schedules, legal fund goals, names of political prisoners. About a dozen people were inside, ranging from college-aged kids to a man in his 40s with a graying beard. They all stopped what they were doing and looked at us. Everyone, this is my sister, Ivy, Chloe said, her voice loud enough to carry. She's leaving the DHS. She's with us. The room was dead silent. Suspicious eyes drilled into me. The man with the beard stood up. He was tall, with the build of a former labor going soft. His name, I knew from the briefing, was Derek Malloy, ex-Army, dishonorably discharged after assaulting an officer. He was Chloe's second-in-command, and according to Brennan, the Free Dawn movement's head of security. Also Brennan's prime candidate for being the embedded New Dawn operative. Your sister, Derek said, his voice a low rumble. The Fed. Ex-Fed, Chloe said, stepping slightly in front of me. A protective gesture. She's seen the light. Derek walked over, his eyes never leaving mine. He circled me, slowly. Seen the light. What brought on this sudden revelation? A crisis of conscience? Or maybe a pending internal investigation? I met his gaze, letting the anger Brennan's folder had instructed me to feel boil to the surface. My mother is dying of stage 4 pancreatic cancer, I said, my voice flat and cold. The insurance that I get, that I killed myself working for, denied her a new treatment, said it was experimental. I appealed. I called everyone I knew. They said no. Then I found out the CEO of the insurance company plays golf with my deputy director. The treatment was approved for the deputy director's brother the week before. My mom dies because she's a nobody. Your system, your buddies in suits, they're not protecting anyone. They're protecting their own. The story was a Frankenstein's monster of truth and lies. Mom's cancer was real. The insurance struggles were real. The specific denial and the golf game were fabrications from the DHS scriptwriters, designed to be emotionally resonant and virtually untraceable. I saw a few people in the room look down, shift uncomfortably. Everyone had a story about the system failing them. Derek didn't blink. So you just walk away? After all those years locking people up for protesting that same system? I didn't just walk away, I said, reaching into my jacket. Derek tensed, his hand moving toward his waistband. Slowly, I pulled out a flash drive. I took something with me. Chloe took the drive. What is it? Surveillance protocols for the next UN General Assembly, I said. Schedules for NYPD, Secret Service, DHS patrols, weak points in the security grid, communications frequencies. I looked at Derek, challenging him, a down payment on my trust. Derek's eyes flickered with something interest. Agreed, let's see it. Chloe plugged the drive into a laptop isolated from the internet. The files popped up. Beautifully forged documents, stamped with classified markings, filled with enough real, technical jargon and accurate, but outdated, information to be convincing. Derek leaned over her shoulder, scanning the pages. I could see the wheels turning in his head. This was gold for anyone planning a disruption or an attack. This is detailed, Chloe murmured, her brow furrowed. Ivy, this is serious. If they know you took this, they will, I said. Soon. I covered my tracks, but they'll figure it out. I'm a traitor now, just like you. I looked around the room, making eye contact with a few of the younger members. I spent my life believing I was on the right side. I was wrong. I want to help. I need to help. I don't have anywhere else to go. The performance was working. I saw nods, expressions of sympathy, but Derek's face was still a mask. We'll have to verify this, he said, and you'll have to be vetted. You understand. You do the same. Of course, I said. Do what you have to do. Derek, come on, Chloe said, closing the laptop. She's my sister, and she was a federal agent 10 hours ago. Derek shot back. We have procedures for a reason. He turned to a wiry young man with glasses tapping away at a computer in the corner. Leo, get a background sweep going. Deep dive. I want to know what she had for breakfast on her 3rd birthday. Leo, the group's hacker, nodded nervously. On it. You'll stay here, Derek said to me, in the main room. Don't touch anything. Don't go anywhere alone. Chloe, with me. He jerked his head toward a back office. Chloe gave me an apologetic look, then followed him. The door closed, and I was left with the others. A young woman with pink hair offered me a cup of terrible coffee. I took it, my hand steady. The first hook was set. Now I had to wait for the line to tighten. For hours later, the vetting was still ongoing. Leo was a savant. He'd already dug up my fabricated online footprint, the angry posts on encrypted forums, the dummy social media profiles criticizing the government, the digital breadcrumbs DHS had laid for the past 6 months to build my cover. He'd even found the records of my mother's insurance denial, perfectly doctored. I sat on a couch, pretending to doze, listening. The warehouse was a hive of activity. People came and went, talking in low tones about the action at the UN. I heard snippets, crowd control routes, media staging areas where the limos will be vulnerable. It was standard protest planning, the kind I'd analyzed 100 times. But underneath, I listened for something else, a mention of a package, a delivery, a special device. Nothing. Derek and Chloe emerged from the office. Derek's expression was unreadable. Chloe's was relieved. Leo's checks out, Derek announced to the room. For now. He walked up to me. You understand we have to be careful. The stakes are higher than you know. I'm starting to get that, I said. Chloe says you're good with logistics, planning. Is that true? It's what I did at DHS. Threat assessment, security bypass, contingency planning. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Good. We have a delivery coming in tonight, a sensitive piece of equipment for the protest. We need to get it from point A to point B without any unwanted attention. Can you plan a route? My heart hammered against my ribs. The virus? The dispersal mechanism? I said, keeping my voice even. It's not a protest sign, Derek said. His eyes locked on mine. It's fragile, and it's hot. If the wrong people get their hands on it, a lot of folks get hurt. Our people. The way he said it, our people, sent a chill down my spine. Was he testing me? Warning me? I understand discretion, I said. Good. You'll work with Matteo on the details. He gestured to a lean, silent man in the corner who had been watching me all afternoon. Matteo nodded once. He had the eyes of a predator. Chloe, you're with me. We have the downtown rally to coordinate. Chloe looked like she wanted to argue, to stay with me, but she just nodded. Be careful, she said to me, and the concern in her voice was like a knife in my gut. Always am. As they dispersed, Matteo approached with a map of the city. The package is coming in by boat. Here. He pointed to a deserted pier in the Bronx. It needs to go here. His finger landed on an address in Queens, a storage facility near LaGuardia Airport. That's a long way through heavy traffic and checkpoints, I said, studying the map. The UN meeting has half the city on lockdown. Hence the need for a plan, Matteo said, his voice accented. Eastern European, maybe. You have skills. Yes, use them. I spent the next 2 hours crafting a route, using my knowledge of police rotations and traffic camera dead zones. It was surreal, using my training to aid what might be a terrorist operation. Every keystroke felt like a betrayal of my oath, of my father. I had to keep reminding myself, this is how you find the virus. This is how you stop it. As I worked, I watched the group. They were a mix of true believers and angry kids. I saw Leo, the hacker, passionately explaining encryption to a wide-eyed teenager. I saw an older woman organizing medical supplies for the protest, talking about treating tear gas exposure. They weren't monsters. They were people who felt failed, cheated, invisible, perfect pawns. And then there was Matteo. He spoke little, observed everything. His movements were economical, precise, military or paramilitary training. He was the only one who made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. When I presented him with the route, 3 alternates with fallbacks and abort points, he examined it with a professional eye. This is good, he admitted. Very professional. I had good teachers, I said. At the DHS, he said. A statement, not a question. His dark eyes held mine. You turn on them quickly. They turned on me first. I recited. He held my gaze a moment longer, then nodded. We move at 2300. Be ready. As night fell, the warehouse emptied out for the rally. Chloe pulled me aside before she left. I'm glad you're here, she said quietly. I know it wasn't easy. You have no idea, I said, and it was the truth. Just be careful around Derek, and especially Matteo. He's not like the others. What do you mean? She glanced around, lowering her voice. He's connected to the people who really fund us, the ones who send the big money. Derek trusts him, but I don't. There's something cold about him. The New Dawn operative, the pieces were clicking into place. Derek was the radical, the true believer with a grudge, but Mateo was the professional, the link to the real threat. I'll be careful, I promised. After she left, I was alone with Leo, who was muttering at his computer, and Mateo, who was cleaning a handgun with meticulous, loving care. I pretended to sleep on the couch, but my mind was racing. I had to get a message to Brennan. I had a location for a possible transfer. I had a description of a key player, but the risk was enormous. If they were monitoring my burner phone, or if Leo had the place wired for signals, I saw my chance when Leo got up to use the bathroom. Mateo was still focused on his weapon. I slipped my encrypted burner from my pocket, shielded it with my body, and typed a quick, coded message. Package transfer. Bronx Pier 41 to Queens Storage Unit, Delta 7, 2300. Courier Mateo. Mail. Eastern Euro. Spec Ops trained. Possible link. I hit send. The message whooshed away into the ether. A second later, the bathroom door opened. Leo came back out. Mateo looked up, his eyes scanning the room, passing over me. Had he seen? I couldn't tell. At 10:30, Mateo stood. Time to go. He tossed me a set of car keys. You're driving. We took a nondescript van. I drove, Mateo in the passenger seat. A deadly silence between us. The night was clear and cold. We took the route I'd planned, avoiding the highways, sticking to side streets. My training took over, my eyes constantly scanning mirrors, watching for tails. I saw none. Either Brennan's team was very good, or they weren't there at all. We reached the Bronx Pier. It was deserted, shrouded in fog coming off the water. A single cargo ship, lights dim, was tied up at the far end. Mateo pointed to a shadowy figure standing by a stack of containers. There, stop here. I pulled over. Mateo got out. Stay, watch. I watched as he met the figure. A brief exchange. A heavy, metal briefcase changed hands. Not a backpack, a briefcase. My mind raced. The dispersal unit schematic had been the size of a backpack. Was this something else? Part of it? The virus itself. Mateo walked back, hefting the case. It looked heavy. He put it in the back of the van. Now, to Queens, quickly. We were halfway to the Queens Midtown Tunnel when the first police car appeared behind us, lights flashing. My blood went cold. No, 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 no. Keep driving, Mateo said, his voice calm. Do not panic. They're pulling us over. It is a routine check. Breathe. You are a civilian. You are nervous. That is normal. I slowed, pulling to the side. My mind was screaming, Brennan, you idiot, you moved too soon. The police car stopped behind us. 2 officers got out, approaching slowly, hands on their weapons. Standard procedure for a nighttime stop. Mateo rolled down his window. Evening. Officers, is there a problem? Step out of the vehicle, please, both of you. My door was wrenched open. A bright flashlight shone in my face. Out, hands where I can see them. I got out, my heart pounding. This was it, my mission, blown in the first 12 hours. I'd be arrested, my cover destroyed. My mother! Open the back, the other officer said to Mateo. Mateo complied, his movements slow. The officer shone his light inside, over the toolboxes, the spare tires and the metal briefcase. What's in the case? Tools, Mateo said. I am a mechanic. Open it. Mateo's eyes flicked to me. There was no fear in them, only calculation. Of course. He lifted the case, set it on the bumper, and dialed the combination. The latches popped with a loud click. He opened the lid. The officer leaned in. I held my breath. The case was filled with wrenches, socket sets, screwdrivers, ordinary, greasy tools. See, Mateo said, smiling. Tools. The officer poked around, then shrugged. All right, everything seems in order. You know your rear tail light is out. Get it fixed. Yes, officer. Thank you. We got back in the van. I was shaking, the adrenaline crash making me nauseous. As we drove away, Mateo spoke, his voice a low purr. A test, he said, to see if you would brake, to see if your friends were watching. He looked at me and in the dashboard lights. His smile was a knife slash. You passed, for now. The tools, it had all been a test. The package, the secretive transfer. The route planning, a theater production to see if I was a plant. And the police stop, coincidence, or part of the test. My coded message to Brennan Had it triggered nothing? Or had he gotten it and done nothing? Knowing it was a test, I had no idea. The only thing I knew for certain was that I was deeper in the labyrinth than before, and the walls were closing in. The monster wasn't just ahead of me. It was sitting in the passenger seat, smiling in the dark. We delivered the case of tools to the storage unit. Mateo said nothing more. When we returned to the warehouse, it was empty. Chloe wasn't back yet. Leo was asleep at his computer. Get some rest, Mateo said. The real work starts tomorrow. I lay on the couch in the dark, staring at the ceiling. The brief moment of connection with Chloe, the fragile hope that I could reach her, felt a million miles away. I was surrounded by enemies, some of whom wanted to overthrow the government, and at least one of whom wanted to release a virus that would kill millions. And my only ally was a general who saw me as a disposable asset, and a sister who thought I was someone I wasn't. I closed my eyes, but sleep wouldn't come. I kept seeing the briefcase opening, revealing the wrenches, a mockery of my mission, a warning. Somewhere in the city, the real virus was waiting, and I had 60 hours left to find it. Sleep was a foreign country. I floated in the shallow waters of exhaustion, my mind replaying the night on a broken loop. The metal case, the wrenches, Mateo's smile, a test. Everything was a test. My every word, every glance, every breath was being measured against an invisible standard. I had passed the first one. I had no idea how many more were coming, or if I'd survive the next. A hand shook my shoulder. I jolted awake, my training snapping me to alertness before my mind caught up. Chloe stood over me, her face pale in the weak morning light, filtering through the high warehouse windows. You look like hell, she said, but her voice lacked its usual edge. There was concern there, buried under the fatigue. Feel like it, I grunted, sitting up. The warehouse was quiet, most of the cots and sleeping bags still occupied. The rally had gone late. How'd it go downtown? The usual, cops in riot gear, a few arrests, a lot of yelling. She sat on the edge of the couch, her shoulders slumped. Sometimes it feels like we're just screaming into a void. You know, they just build the void walls higher. This was the opening, the disillusioned older sister, ready to listen. I shifted, drawing my knees up. You're not. The things you're saying, people are listening. I was in the room where they watch you. They're scared of you. Chloe, she looked at me, a flicker of her old fire in her eyes. They should be. But is it enough? I pressed, keeping my voice low. Protests, signs, it gets attention. But does it change anything? Or do they just wait for you to get tired, go home, and then go back to business as usual? She studied my face. What are you saying? I'm saying. I leaned forward, lowering my voice to a conspiratorial whisper. The script Brennan's psych profile team had written for me. I took those files for a reason, not just to prove a point. The system isn't broken. Chloe, it's working exactly as designed. It's a fortress. You can't change it by throwing rocks at the walls. You have to know where the foundations are cracked. You have to have the blueprint. Her eyes widened slightly. The blueprint. The UN security plans, the routes, the schedules, that's just the outer wall. I've seen the blueprints for the whole fortress, where the money flows, who gives the orders, the black sites, the off-book ops, the people they've disappeared. I let the words hang, watching her process it. I was describing the very conspiracy theories she subscribed to, but from the mouth of a supposed insider. I'm tired of screaming into the void. I want to tear the void down. I saw the conflict on her face. The idealist who believed in the power of truth and protest, and the revolutionary who was starting to believe only force worked. That's what Derek says, she said quietly, that the time for talking is over. Derek's been in the fight longer than I have, I said, carefully neutral. He's seen what they do. He has. She looked around, then back at me. He wants to see you, in the office, now that you've proven yourself. My stomach tightened. Proven myself how? The transfer last night. Mateo said you were cool under pressure, that you didn't flinch when the cops came. She gave a half smile, said you drive like a getaway driver. A useful skill, I said, standing. My body ached from the couch. Lead the way. Derek's office was a converted shipping container at the back of the warehouse, soundproofed with egg crate foam and accessed through a heavy steel door. Inside, it was part planning room, part armory. Maps of the city were pinned to the walls, marked with colored pins. Schematics of buildings, Grand Central, the UN, the federal building, were taped beside them. A table held a disassembled rifle, cleaning supplies, and a laptop showing a live feed of what looked like a security camera overlooking a midtown intersection. Derek and Mateo were hunched over the laptop. They looked up as we entered. "Ivy," Derek said, not smiling. "Come in." "Close the door." Chloe shut the door behind us. The soundproofing made the space eerily quiet. The only noise the hum of the laptop fan. "Chloe says you're ready for real work," Derek said, leaning back in his chair. His eyes were bloodshot. "You understand that what we're doing here, it's not a game. The people we're up against, they don't play by rules. They disappear people. They torture. They start wars for profit. You ready to look that in the eye and not blink?" "I've already seen it," I said, the lie now as familiar as my own name. "I processed the orders for a drone strike in Yemen that took out a wedding party. 23 civilians. The report I filed called it acceptable collateral. My signature is on it. That part was true. It haunted me. I used the real memory to fuel the performance. I'm done blinking." Derek and Mateo exchanged a look. Some silent communication passed between them. "The UN action," Derek said. "It's not just a protest. It's a statement, a declaration that we won't be ignored anymore. To do that, we need more than bodies and signs. We need leverage." "Leverage," I repeated. "Disruption is a tool," Mateo said, his accent softening the word. "But to break a system, you must demonstrate its fragility. You must show the people that the walls are paper, that the guards are sleeping." A cold knot formed in my chest. This was it, the pivot from activism to something else. "What do you need me to do?" Derek tapped a key on the laptop. The screen changed to a schematic of a building's ventilation system, a museum, the Museum of Modern Art, the UN General Assembly dinner. "It's not at the UN. It's here, a cultural outreach event. All the diplomats, the big donors, the secretaries, they'll all be in one room, feeling good about themselves, thinking they're safe." I stared at the schematic. "You want to hit the dinner?" "We want to make a statement," Derek corrected. "A nonviolent one, but one they can't ignore. One that shows we can reach them anywhere." He zoomed in on the schematic. "The air handling unit for the main gallery is here, accessible from a service corridor. We introduce a payload into the system, non-lethal, but dramatic, aerosolized, indelible dye, invisible until activated by body heat. By the end of the night, every dignitary in the room will be stained head to toe in bright red, the blood of the people they've forgotten. The images will be everywhere. It will be a humiliation they can't wash off." It was audacious, theatrical, exactly the kind of high-profile, symbolic action that would send the intelligence community into a frenzy. And it was a perfect cover. While security was focused on a dye bomb at a museum dinner, the real attack, the virus, could be deployed elsewhere. Or the dye bomb itself was a distraction. Or my mind raced, analyzing. The MoMA's security would be intense, but focused on weapons, explosives, intrusions, a canister of dye smuggled in through a maintenance access. It was plausible, and it didn't involve killing anyone. Was that the Free Dawn movement's limit? Or was this just Derek's compartmentalized plan for the useful idiots, while Mateo and the real New Dawn operatives planned something else? "It's risky," I said. "The security on that building will be airtight. The Secret Service will have swept it days in advance, which is why we have you," Derek said, a slow smile spreading across his face. "You know how they think. You know their procedures, their blind spots. You can get us in." He was asking me to plan an attack, to use my training against my own people. The irony was so thick I could taste it. "I'll need blueprints, security shift schedules, electrical plans, everything. Leo can get you whatever you need from the city archives, and a few back doors," Chloe said, speaking for the first time. She was watching me, her expression unreadable. "Can you do it?" I looked at the schematic, at the highlighted ventilation shaft. A way in, a way to potentially stop whatever was really planned, or a way to become an accomplice to mass murder. I had no choice. I had to stay close. I had to know. "I can do it," I said. "Good," Derek said. "You and Leo work on the ingress. Mateo will handle the payload. Chloe, you're on crowd mobilization for the secondary protest outside. We create chaos on all fronts. He stood up. We move in 48 hours. The dinner is at 2000 hours day after tomorrow. I want the die released by 2030. At the height of the speeches, synchronize your watches. The world changes at 2030. We dispersed. Chloe lingered as I headed for the door. Ivy, she said softly, the die thing, it's a big step. Are you sure you're ready for this? Once we do this, there's no going back to your old life. I looked at my sister, the girl who used to be afraid of the dark, now standing in a room, planning to unleash chaos. I wanted to grab her, shake her, tell her she was being used, that the man she trusted was leading her into an abyss. But I couldn't, not yet. My old life is already gone. Chloe, I said, this is the only way forward I can see. I found Leo at his bank of screens, a nest of energy drink cans and chip bags surrounding him. He was maybe 19, with the pale skin of someone who lived in the glow of monitors. Hey, I said, I need everything you've got on MoMA. Blueprints, security, the works. He blinked up at me, pushing his glasses up his nose. On it, I've already pulled most of the architectural files from the city database, hacking the security contractor's system now. Give me an hour. I pulled up a chair, watching as his fingers flew across the keyboard, windows opening and closing in a blur of code. This kid could be making a fortune in Silicon Valley. Instead, he was here, trying to bring down the system he saw as corrupt. I thought of the hacker cells we monitored at DHS, the true believers, the anarchists, the thrill seekers. Which one was Leo? Why do you do this, Leo? I asked, keeping my tone casual. He didn't look away from the screen. Same reason as you, I guess. The system is rotten. It's built on lies. Someone's got to tear it down and start over. And the die bomb, the humiliation tactic? You think that's the way to do it? He shrugged. It's a message. A big, loud, embarrassing message. Maybe if they're embarrassed enough, they'll actually listen for once. He finally glanced at me. You don't agree? I agree that they need to listen, I said carefully. I'm just wondering if they'll hear the message, or just see an attack and send in more cops. That's the risk, he said, turning back to his screen. But doing nothing is a bigger risk. The planet's burning. Man, people are dying because they can't afford medicine. The whole thing's a pyramid scheme, and we're at the bottom. Sometimes you gotta shake the pyramid. He talked like Chloe, the same rhetoric, the same anger, but his eyes, reflected in the monitor, held a fanatic's glow. He believed in the cause, but he also believed in the smash and grab thrill of it. He was a true believer, but he was also in love with the hack. Got it, he said suddenly, a grin splitting his face. I'm in. MoMA's security hub, live camera feeds, motion sensors, the whole 9 yards. He tapped a key, and a grid of video feeds filled one of his monitors. We were looking at the museum from the inside. Guard desks, galleries, hallways. Check it out. They've got motion sensors in the ventilation shafts. Standard procedure. But look at the pattern. He zoomed in. The sensors were spaced at regular intervals, creating a grid. But there was a blind spot. A 3-foot gap between 2 sensors in a junction box near the main air handler. A gap just big enough for a small canister to be placed. That's our entry point, I said, the analyst in me taking over. But we'd have to disable the sensors on either side just before insertion, or the gap in the signal will trigger an alarm. I can do that remotely, Leo said, his grin widening. I can loop the feed for those 2 sensors for a 90-second window. Make it look like they're still active. You'd have 90 seconds to get in, place the payload, and get out. 90 seconds. It was tight, but possible. We'd need someone inside to do the placement. A janitor, a caterer, someone with access. Already on it, a voice said behind me. I turned. Matteo stood there, holding a black duffel bag. He dropped it on the table with a thud. Inside were 2 sets of custodial coveralls, keycards, and ID badges for a company called Metro Clean Services. The museum uses a third-party service for deep cleaning before big events, Matteo said. The cleaning is scheduled for tomorrow night. After closing, a 2-man team. These, he tapped the IDs, are them. The real team will have an unfortunate accident on their way to work. We take their place. It was clean, professional, and the payload. I asked. Mateo unzipped a separate compartment. Inside, nestled in foam, was a metal cylinder about the size of a fire extinguisher. It had a simple digital timer and a valve release. The dye, pressurized, set the timer, open the valve, walk away. It will aerosolize and fill the ventilation shaft. The system will distribute it throughout the target gallery within minutes. I examined the device. It looked crude but effective, but something felt off. The cylinder was heavy, too heavy for just dye. What's the dye base? Water? Oil? A proprietary formula, Mateo said smoothly, closing the bag. Non-toxic, water-soluble, but once it reacts with skin oils and heat, it becomes permanent for 48 hours. Very dramatic, very messy. I nodded, but the doubt was a seed, taking root. I needed to get a sample. I needed to know what was really in that canister. The rest of the day was a whirlwind of planning. Leo and I mapped the route from the service entrance to the air handler junction, timing it with stopwatches. We identified camera blind spots, guard patrol patterns. I fell into the rhythm of mission planning, the familiar dance of risk assessment and logistics. It felt horrifyingly normal. Chloe drifted in and out, coordinating with other cell leaders, her phone constantly buzzing. She watched me sometimes, a strange look on her face, part pride, part apprehension. I was her big sister, finally on her side. The cognitive dissonance must have been eating at her. As night fell again, Derek called a meeting. The core group: Derek, Mateo, Chloe, Leo, myself, and a few others I'd come to know as reliable foot soldiers, gathered around the main table. Tomorrow night is Phase 1, Derek announced, his voice low and intense. The MoMA action. Ivy and Mateo will handle the insertion. Leo will be on comms and tech. The rest of you are on distraction duty. Chloe, you'll lead a flash mob protest outside the museum's 54th Street entrance at 1,900 hours. Draw the police response that way. Make noise, cause a scene, but don't get arrested. We need you free for the main event at the UN the following day. Nods around the table. The air crackled with adrenaline. Once the dye is released, Derek continued, we scatter. No communication for 24 hours. Then we regroup here at 2,100 the following night for final prep for the UN action. This is it, people, the moment we've been working for. The world is about to wake up. There were murmurs of agreement. Fists bumped on the table. I forced myself to nod along, to look determined. Inside, I was ice. The UN action, the main event. That's when the virus would be released. I had 24 hours after the MoMA job to find out where and stop it. The meeting broke up. People moved off in small groups, talking in excited whispers. I was gathering my notes when Mateo appeared at my elbow. A word, he said, nodding toward the back alley exit. My senses went on high alert. I followed him out into the cool night air. The alley was cluttered with dumpsters, the only light coming from a single, flickering bulb above a door. Mateo lit a cigarette, the flame briefly illuminating his sharp features. You have done well, he said, blowing smoke into the damp air. Derek trusts you. Chloe trusts you. This is good. But you don't, I stated. He smiled, a thin, humorless line. Trust is a luxury. I believe you are who you say you are. Your story checks out. Your performance is convincing. But conviction, he tapped his temple, that is harder to fake. Why are you really here? Ivy Carter? Revenge for your mother? Disillusionment? Or something else? This was another test, deeper than the police stop. My father died because of lies told by powerful men, I said, the truth giving the lie strength. My mother is dying because of greed. I served the machine that protected those men and fed that greed. I'm not here for revenge. I'm here for justice, the kind they don't teach you about in the DHS handbook. He watched me, his eyes like black glass. Justice, he repeated, as if tasting the word, a noble concept. But the world is not divided into the just and the unjust. It is divided into the strong and the weak, the predators and the prey. Your government, they are predators. They wear suits, but they have teeth. We must show our teeth too. Is that what the dye bomb is, showing our teeth? It is a bark, he said, a warning. To make them look one way, he took a long drag, while we bite the other. There it was, the confirmation. The MoMA job was a diversion. My mind raced. If the UN General Assembly was the real target, and the virus was the bite, then the attack had to be at the UN complex itself. or an event directly tied to it. The dinner was at MoMA. The main assembly meetings were at the UN headquarters. But the virus was airborne, contagious. They'd want maximum dispersal, maximum population density. The UN plaza, packed with protesters, media, and security, or inside the building itself. The bite, I said slowly. It has to hurt. It has to change the game. It will change everything, Matteo said, his voice dropping to a whisper. The old world will end in a cough, a fever, and from the ashes, the dawn will rise. A new dawn. New Dawn. He'd said the name, not Free Dawn. New Dawn, the terrorist organization, the one with the virus. It was all I could do not to react. I kept my face a mask of grim determination. Then, let's make sure they're looking the other way when it happens. He nodded, satisfied. Get some rest. Tomorrow, we make them look. I went back inside, my heart hammering against my ribs. I had to get a warning out. But how? Leo was almost certainly monitoring all electronic signals in and out of the warehouse. My encrypted burner was for emergencies, 4 status updates to Brennan, a detailed warning about the virus, the real target. Matteo's confession. It would be a burst of data, easily detectable. I needed to get out. I needed a window. I found Chloe by the wood stove, staring into the flames. Can't sleep either? I asked, sitting next to her. Too much adrenaline, she said. Too many what-ifs. I know the feeling. I paused. I need a favor. Before tomorrow. I need to see Mom. One last time. In case things go wrong. She looked at me, her eyes softening. Ivy, I know it's a risk, but I have to. I need her to know. I let my voice break. I need her to know I'm doing this for her. For Dad. That I finally get it. The emotional blackmail was cruel, but necessary. Chloe's loyalty to our mother was her Achilles heel. She chewed her lip, then nodded. Okay, but we have to be quick. In and out. And you can't tell her anything. She can't know. I won't say a word. I just need to see her. Give me an hour. I'll arrange a car. We'll go just before dawn, when everyone's asleep. It was my window, a chance to get to a dead drop, to a public phone, to something. The hour crawled by. I pretended to sleep, my mind running through scenarios. I could call Brennan from a payphone near the hospital. I could leave a message at a predetermined drop, but I had to be sure the information got through. Matteo's slip had been deliberate. I realized, a final test. If I suddenly tried to send a high-priority warning, they'd know. I had to be smarter. At 4 a.m., Chloe shook me awake. Let's go. The streets were empty, washed in the pale blue light before sunrise. Chloe drove a beat-up sedan, her knuckles white on the wheel. We didn't speak. The bunker was in the basement of a nondescript apartment building in Washington Heights. She parked a block away, and we went in through a service entrance. Mom was asleep when we entered the sterile room. She looked so small in the bed, swallowed by tubes and machines. The sight punched the air from my lungs. Chloe went to her side, smoothing her thin hair. She had a rough night, she whispered. The pain was bad. The new meds make her sleep a lot. I stood at the foot of the bed, a torrent of guilt and fear threatening to drown me. I was lying to my sister, betraying my oath, risking everything. For what? To stop a plot I might already be too late to prevent? To protect a government that had turned me into a spy against my own family? My mother's eyes fluttered open. They were cloudy with drugs, but they focused on me. Ivy! Her voice was a dry rustle. You're here. I'm here, Mom. I went to her other side, taking her frail hand. It was cold. You're not in your uniform, she said, a faint smile touching her lips. I like it. You look like my girl. Tears burned behind my eyes. I am your girl, Mom. Chloe says you're helping her now, with her cause. Mom's gaze moved between us, my girls, together again. That's good. That's how it should be. The lie was a physical pain. We're together, Mom. We're going to make things right. She squeezed my hand weakly. Your father, he'd be proud of both of you, standing up for what's right. Her eyes closed again, her breathing evening out into sleep. I couldn't breathe. The weight of it all was crushing me. Chloe was watching me, tears streaking her own face. I need to use the bathroom, I choked out, and fled the room before I completely broke down. In the small, concrete bathroom, I splashed water on my face and looked at my reflection, a stranger, hollow-eyed and terrified. This was my chance. There was a landline phone in the bunker's main room. I could call Brennan, give him everything. Matteo, New Dawn, the virus, the UN. But if the line was tapped, if Leo was monitoring Chloe's contacts, if anyone was listening, it was over. And if I called it in, Brennan would move. He'd raid the warehouse, arrest everyone. Chloe would go to prison for terrorism. My mother would die alone. The virus plot might go deeper. The operatives might scatter, and the attack would happen anyway. I was trapped. Every move was wrong. Then I remembered the dead drop, a backup for extreme emergencies, a location known only to me and Brennan, a public place, a way to pass information without a trace. I had to get there. Now, I left the bathroom. Chloe was sitting by our mother's bed, holding her hand. I have to go, I said. I need some air. I'll walk for a bit, clear my head. She looked up, wary. Ivy, it's not safe. If they're looking for you, they're not yet, and I need a minute. Please. She searched my face, then nodded. 1 hour. Then we have to be back. Meet me at the car. 1 hour. I slipped out of the bunker and into the pre-dawn streets. The dead drop was a specific park bench in Fort Tryon Park, 20 blocks north. I walked fast, my senses screaming, expecting a tail at every corner. I saw no one. The park was deserted, mist clinging to the trees. The bench, dedicated to someone's beloved pet, was wet with dew. My instructions: lift the left arm of the bench. There is a hollow space underneath. Leave the message. Replace the arm. I had nothing to write with. No paper. Think, Ivy. I fumbled in my pockets. A receipt from a gas station. A chewed pen. Good enough. I crouched, my back to the path, and pried up the wooden arm. It came loose with a squeak. Inside the hollow space was a small, waterproof capsule. Empty. Good. I scribbled on the back of the receipt the words of frantic shorthand only Brennan would understand. MO equals decoy. Un equals real target. Virus equals A237. Courier equals Matteo. Nexus to ND. D-Day tomorrow. Need IMD extract post-MO. Have location. I stuffed the note into the capsule, sealed it, and placed it back in the hollow. I lowered the arm, making sure it looked undisturbed. The whole process took less than 30 seconds. I stood, my legs soaking. It was done. Now I had to hope Brennan checked the drop in time, and that he'd send help, and that the help wouldn't get us all killed. I turned to leave and froze. A figure stood under a tree, 20 yards away, watching me, silhouetted by the mist, face in shadow, but I knew the posture. The shape, Matteo. My blood turned to ice. How long had he been there? Had he seen he didn't move? He just watched. Act normal. Don't run. I forced myself to walk, not back the way I came, but on a path that curved away from him, deeper into the park. My back prickled. Was he following? I didn't look back. I reached the far edge of the park, my heart trying to beat its way out of my chest. I risked a glance over my shoulder. The path was empty. The mist swirled around the trees. Matteo was gone. Had he seen? Or was he just watching me, testing my loyalty one more time? The doubt was a worm, burrowing into my brain. If he had seen, I was dead. If he hadn't, I was still in the game. But the clock was ticking louder than ever. I had 24 hours until the MoMA job. 24 hours to find the virus, or become an accessory to the worst attack in human history. And somewhere in the shadows, a man with the eyes of a predator was watching, waiting to see which way I would run. The walk back to the car was a gauntlet of ghosts. Every rustle in the bushes, every distant car engine was a footstep behind me. Matteo's silhouette was burned into my retinas. Had he seen the drop? The logical part of my brain, the analyst's mind, screamed that he had. The operative, the survivor, insisted I proceed as if he hadn't. To act guilty was to be guilty. So I walked with a measured pace, my hands loose at my sides, my breath steady. On the outside, inside, I was a hurricane. Chloe was waiting by the car, her arms crossed, worry etched on her face. You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. I'm fine, I lied, sliding into the passenger seat. Just needed the air. She didn't press, starting the engine. The silence on the drive back to the warehouse was heavy. I could feel her watching me, measuring my reaction. The sister she thought she knew versus the woman I was becoming. The gap between them was a chasm. Back at the warehouse, the energy was electric. People were checking gear, running through final comms checks. The air thick with a cocktail of fear and anticipation. Leo was at his station, headphones on, his fingers a blur. Derek was barking orders, his voice hoarse. Mateo was nowhere to be seen. My reprieve was over. "Gather round," Derek shouted, clapping his hands for attention. The room quieted. Final briefing. Listen up. He laid out the plan one last time. The cleaning crew substitution. The insertion via ventilation. The dive bomb timer set for 20-30 hours. Chloe's flash mob protest. The escape routes. It was all clean, simple, and terrifyingly efficient. "When we're done," Derek said, his eyes shining with a zealot's fervor, "they won't be able to ignore us. They'll have to listen." I tuned him out, my eyes scanning the room. Where was Mateo? The virus, the real attack. It had to be timed with the distraction. If the moment job was the feint, the main assault had to be coordinated to happen simultaneously or shortly after, while security was dealing with a museum full of red-stained diplomats. The real weapon would be deployed. A hand touched my arm. I flinched. It was Chloe. "You're shaking," she murmured, her brow furrowed. "Are you sure you're okay with this?" I looked into her eyes, the same eyes that had looked up to me, trusted me, loved me, and I was about to walk into a trap, or spring one. "I have to be," I said. It was the truest thing I'd said all day. The door to the shipping container office burst open. Mateo stepped out, his presence sucking the air from the room. He was dressed in a dark suit, looking every inch the corporate professional, except for the black duffel bag slung over his shoulder. "The transport is ready," he announced. His eyes found mine. "You and I leave in 5 minutes. Ivy." My blood ran cold. We were going together. That changed everything. If he suspected me, this was my last ride. If he didn't, this was my chance to get closer to the truth. Derek nodded. "Go. Secure the package. We'll handle the rest here." I grabbed my own go bag, a nondescript backpack containing a change of clothes, a first aid kit, and an encrypted burner phone. I didn't look at Chloe as I followed Mateo out into the alley. I couldn't. The transport was a nondescript black Suburban, idling in the shadows. A man I didn't recognize was behind the wheel. He had the dead eyes of a hired gun. Mateo got in the front passenger seat. I climbed into the back. The door slammed, sealing me in. The driver pulled away from the curb without a word. We merged into traffic, heading toward Midtown. The silence in the car was absolute, broken only by the low hum of the tires on asphalt. I kept my eyes on the back of Mateo's head. Was he going to kill me? Dispose of me in a river? The city blurred past the tinted windows. "We are being watched," Mateo said suddenly, his voice calm. He wasn't talking to me. He was talking to the driver. 3 cars back, a silver sedan, government plates. My heart stopped. Brennan? Had he received my message? Was this an extraction or an ambush? "Copy," the driver said, his voice a monotone. He made a series of sudden turns, diving into side streets, doubling back. The driver of the silver sedan mirrored every move. They were good, professionals. Mateo turned in his seat, his eyes meeting mine in the rearview mirror. There was no anger there, no suspicion, just a cold, assessing intelligence. "Your friends are persistent, Ivy." My mouth was dry. "I don't know who that is." "Brennan's people," he stated, not questioned. "He doesn't trust you, or he's protecting his asset." He turned back around. "It is of no consequence. We will lose them." The driver executed a perfect bootlegger's turn, spinning the Suburban into an underground parking garage. The gate came down behind us. We were in a private facility, anonymous and secure. The silver sedan was left on the street above. Mateo got out, gesturing for me to follow. We took an elevator to a private hangar on the roof. A helicopter sat waiting, its rotors already spinning. The pilot, another unknown, gave us a curt nod. We boarded. The noise was deafening. Mateo handed me a headset. "This changes nothing," he shouted over the engine. "We still have a job to do." The helicopter lifted off, banking sharply over the East River. The city sprawled below us, a glittering map of lights. I looked for the silver sedan, but it was lost in the gridlock. Where were we going? Not to the museum. This was a different direction entirely. Mateo leaned toward me, his voice clear in my headset. "The primary insertion team is already at the museum. You and I have a different assignment." My blood turned to ice water. "What assignment?" A delivery, he said, his eyes glinting. A special delivery for our friends at the UN. The virus, it wasn't at the museum. It was going to the UN. The MoMA job was a complete diversion. My mind reeled. The plan had been compartmentalized even further than I'd thought. Even Derek and Chloe didn't know the real target. They were the pawns. Mateo and his new Dawn handlers were the players. What about the cleaning crew? I asked, grasping at straws. The dye bomb. A necessary fiction, Mateo said, a cruel smile on his lips, to keep our friends in the movement motivated, to give them a victory to believe in. He patted the duffel bag at his feet. This is the real victory. The helicopter began to descend, not toward the UN complex, but toward a secluded area on the west side of Manhattan, near the Hudson River, an industrial park, long abandoned. A single, unmarked building stood in the center of a chain-link fence. The bird settled onto a helipad. Mateo was out the door before the skids had fully touched down. I followed. The downdraft whipping my hair into a frenzy. Inside the building, the air was cold and smelled of ozone and old oil. It was a massive, open space, the floor marked with faded lines and loading dock symbols. In the center of the room, a small group of people waited. I recognized one of them instantly. He was older, in his 50s, with a receding hairline and wire-rimmed glasses. He wore a nondescript, gray suit. I'd seen his face 100 times in DHS briefings. He was a mid-level functionary in the State Department, a man named Arthur Vance, a man I'd met at a conference 2 years ago, a man who was supposed to be a patriot. Vance was a traitor. Next to him stood a woman in a lab coat, her face hidden by a surgical mask, and 2 large men in tactical gear, armed with submachine guns. Mateo, Vance said, his voice smooth, devoid of emotion. You are late. Traffic was a bitch, Arthur, Mateo said, dropping the duffel bag on a nearby workbench with a heavy thud. You have the item? Vance gestured to the woman in the lab coat. She was holding a small, insulated case, the size of a lunchbox. The courier is here. The package is ready for transport. Mateo unzipped his duffel bag. Inside, nestled in custom-cut foam, was a complex-looking device. It looked like a cross between a high-end air purifier and a server rack. With a glass chamber in the center, I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that the glass chamber was empty, waiting. This is the dispersal unit, Mateo said, more to me than to Vance. State-of-the-art, silent, portable, and completely untraceable once activated. He looked at me. This is what you were really brought here to see. Ivy, the future. Vance's eyes met mine. He showed no recognition, no surprise, just a cold, appraising stare. She is the sister, the one from the bunker. She is with us now, Mateo said, fully vetted, fully committed. I forced myself to nod, to look at the device with a professional's eye, not a horrified citizen's. It's smaller than I expected, I managed, my voice surprisingly steady. Size is not the measure of a weapon, Vance said, his voice like gravel. Efficiency is. This unit, once placed in a high-traffic, climate-controlled environment, will disperse the A237 viral agent in a targeted, sustained aerosol. The infection will begin within minutes. The first symptoms, fever, cough, malaise, will appear within an hour. By the time the first responders arrive, the initial wave of infection will be well underway. It is elegant in its simplicity. And the target? I asked, the words tasting like acid. Mateo smiled. A thin, sharp line. The United Nations General Assembly Hall. The main chamber. During the opening session, tomorrow morning. A global audience. A global message. The entire world leadership. In one room. A biological massacre. How do you get it in? I asked, my mind working, trying to find a weakness, a point of failure, anything. That is where you come in, Ms. Carter, Vance said, and for the first time, a hint of a smile touched his lips. You, with your DHS credentials, your knowledge of the security protocols, you will be the final courier. You will get the device into the building. My blood turned to fire. Me? I can't. You can, Mateo interrupted, his voice hard. You will. You have a personal stake in this. Remember? Your mother, the system that failed her. This is your chance to make them pay, to make them all pay. He was playing me, using my own lies against me. The grief, the anger, the sense of injustice. They were twisting it, molding it into a weapon. You want me to be a suicide bomber, I said, the words flat. No, Vance said, his voice chillingly reasonable. The device is on a timer, a long one. It will be placed, and you will have ample time to exit the building before activation. You will be a victim, a concerned citizen who reported a suspicious package. You will be a hero, not a villain. The perfect cover. It was a lie, a beautiful, intricate lie. I would be the patsy, the one who carried the weapon in, the one who would be conveniently discredited, or dead, when the truth came out. Why me? I asked again, stalling. Why not one of your own people? Because your face is not in the system as a known associate of any of our cells, Mateo said. You are a clean cut, a disgruntled ex-employee, a perfect scapegoat, and because you are Chloe's sister, her involvement gives the story a human element. A tragic family torn apart by a corrupt system. The media will eat it up. They had it all figured out. The mission, the motive, the fall guy, me. I looked at the device, at the glass chamber waiting to be filled with death. I looked at Vance, the traitor. I looked at Mateo, the terrorist, and I knew, with a clarity that cut through the fear, that I had to stop this. Not tomorrow, tonight. My hand was inches from the encrypted burner phone in my pocket. One call, one burst transmission. Brennan would have the building surrounded in minutes. But then what? Chloe would be implicated. My mother would be devastated. And the virus, if it was already here, in this building, a raid might trigger its release. I had to get it out of here, get it away from the UN, somewhere it could be contained. You've given me a lot to think about, I said, forcing a tone of reluctant acceptance. Mateo's eyes narrowed slightly. You do not seem convinced. I am, I said quickly. It's just a big step. I need to see it, the device, up close. Vance and Mateo exchanged a glance. It was a risk. A smart operative wouldn't allow it, but their arrogance, their belief that I was already theirs, would be their downfall. Very well, Vance said, but do not touch anything. I walked to the workbench, my heart pounding against my ribs. The device was a masterpiece of deadly engineering. Sleek, quiet, efficient. The glass chamber was empty. For now, I ran my hand over the smooth metal casing, my fingers brushing against a seam. A panel. I felt a tiny vibration, a resonance. The power source, a battery, or a small generator. It was warm. I looked up, meeting Mateo's gaze. It's impressive, I said. When do we move? Tomorrow morning, Vance said. 0400 hours. Be ready. I nodded, backing away. I'll be ready. The helicopter ride back to the city was a silent torment. Mateo didn't speak. He just watched me, his eyes unreadable. I had to assume he was suspicious, that the test in the warehouse had been just the beginning. This was the final exam. When we landed on the roof of the warehouse, the sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in hues of fire and blood, a fitting omen. We descended to the main floor. The place was a hive of activity. The MoMA team was gearing up, their faces painted with camo grease, their eyes bright with purpose. Chloe was there, checking her own gear, her expression a mixture of excitement and fear. She looked up as I entered. Her smile was hesitant. You're back. Is everything okay? I looked at her, at my sister, the girl I was sworn to protect, the woman who was about to be consumed by a lie. I opened my mouth to tell her, to scream the truth, to grab her and run. And then I saw Mateo, standing in the shadows by the door, his hand resting casually on the butt of a pistol tucked into his waistband. Watching, waiting, I closed my mouth, swallowed the truth. Everything's fine, I lied, just another boring meeting. The words tasted like ash. I had to get a message to Brennan. I had to stop this. But how? I was in a cage, and the bars were made of my own family. The final act was about to begin, and I was standing center stage, with a role I had to play, a role that would either save the world or destroy everything I loved. I looked at Chloe, and in my heart, I said a silent goodbye. The trap was sprung, and I was the bait. The next 2 hours were a blur of final preparations, a sickening pantomime of purpose. Leo handed out earpieces and tested frequencies. Derek went over escape routes one last time, his finger tracing lines on the city map like a general planning a suicide mission. Chloe checked and rechecked her go bag, her movements tight with nervous energy. I moved through it all like a ghost. My body was here, putting on the dark Metro clean, coveralls, clipping the fake ID badge to my chest. But my mind was 1,000 miles away, in that cold warehouse with the dispersal unit, with Vance's traitorous smile, with the empty glass chamber waiting to be filled with genocide. Mateo was my shadow. He didn't speak, but his presence was a constant pressure at my back. He'd changed into identical coveralls. We were a match set, the cleaning crew, the perfect, invisible delivery system for a decoy. My role was to be the distraction, to sell the lie so the real horror could unfold unseen. But I was also, I now understood, the canary in the coal mine. If I flinched, if I failed, Mateo's job was to eliminate me permanently. Listen up. Derek's voice cut through the chatter. The room fell silent. In 10 minutes, we move. Chloe's team hits the street protest at 1900. Ivy and Mateo enter the museum service door at 1925. Leo, you have the camera loop ready at 1928. 90-second window. No mistakes. Nods all around. I met Chloe's eyes across the room. She gave me a tight, anxious smile and a thumbs up. The gesture was so achingly familiar, from 1,000 childhood dares and secrets, that it felt like a knife twisting in my gut. I'm doing this for you. I wanted to scream, to save you from what you don't even know you're a part of. But the words were ashes in my mouth. Let's move. Derek barked. The warehouse emptied in a coordinated rush. Chloe hugged me quickly, fiercely. Be safe, she whispered, her voice thick. You too, I managed. Then she was gone, swept out the door with her team. Mateo nodded to me. Time to go to work. We took a different van, driven by the same dead-eyed man from before. The canister of dye was in a wheeled janitor's cart between us. I stared at it, my mind racing. Was it really just dye, or was it something else? A test within a test? My orders from Brennan were clear. Observe, report, do not compromise the mission. But what was the mission anymore? To stop a dye bomb? Or to stop the end of the world? The van pulled into a loading dock behind a row of trendy restaurants, a block from MoMA. The museum service entrance was a heavy metal door marked with warnings. A security camera pointed down at it, an unblinking red eye. My earpiece crackled. In position, Leo's voice said, tinny and tense. I have visual on you. Stand by for camera loop now. You have 90 seconds. Go. The camera's red light winked out. Mateo was already moving, swiping a keycard. The door buzzed open. He wheeled the cart inside. I followed. The door, sighing, shut behind us, sealing us in. The service corridor was sterile, lit by harsh fluorescent lights, smelling of floor wax and stale air. My training took over. I scanned ahead, noting the positions of doors, the lack of cameras in the hall. According to the schematics, the access panel for the main air handler was 50 yards down, around a corner. Move, Mateo whispered, his voice urgent. The cart's wheels squeaked on the linoleum. The sound was deafening in the silence. We reached the junction. A metal grate covered the opening to the ventilation shaft. Mateo produced a small cordless drill from the cart and made quick work of the screws. The grate came away. The shaft beyond was a square, black mouth. Timer, Mateo said, handing me the canister. I took it. It was heavier than I expected. I set the digital timer on its side for 20-30 hours. As planned, my finger hovered over the valve release switch. Do it, Mateo hissed, his eyes on his watch. This was it, the point of no return. I opened the valve. A hiss of pressurized gas. I shoved the canister into the shaft. It clanked against the metal and rolled a few feet into the darkness before coming to a stop. Great, Mateo said, already holding it in place. I fumbled for the drill, my hands slick with sweat. I got 2 screws in, cross-threaded one, forced it. The grate hung lopsided. Time! Leo's voice screamed in my ear, loop ending in 5. Leave it. Mateo grabbed my arm, yanking me away from the shaft. We ran, abandoning the cart, pelting back down the corridor. Behind us, I heard the faint clickwire as the security camera loop ended and live feed resumed. If a guard was watching, they'd see an empty hallway. For now, we burst out the service door into the alley. The van was already there, door sliding open. We piled in, and it screeched away from the curb. Status. Mateo barked into his comms. Devices placed. Leo's voice came back. Timer active. Camera feed is clean. No alarms. Matteo leaned back, a slow, satisfied smile spreading across his face. He looked at me. Phase 1 complete. You did well. I didn't answer. I was listening to the sound in my head, the echo of that hiss. It hadn't sounded like a dye aerosol. It had sounded thinner, colder. A seed of dread, planted in the warehouse, took root and sprouted thorns. Where to now? I asked, my voice hollow. Back to the warehouse. We wait for the fireworks, then disperse as planned. But as the van turned away for Midtown, Matteo's phone buzzed. He looked at the screen, his smile vanishing. Change of plan, he said to the driver. Take us to the secondary location. Now. The driver didn't question. He made an abrupt U-turn, heading west, toward the river, toward the industrial park. My blood ran cold. What's wrong? The package has been moved, Matteo said, his voice tight. Security concerns. We are to rendezvous and assist with final transport to the primary site. The virus, it was on the move. Tonight, not tomorrow. The timeline had accelerated. Why? Had my dead drop message been found? Had Brennan made a move? Or was this always the plan, and I'd never been trusted with a real schedule? The van raced through the darkened streets. I had to do something. Now, we were going to the virus. I had a weapon. The pistol I'd taken from the warehouse armory, hidden under my coveralls. 1 bullet for Matteo, 1 for the driver, 1 for the dispersal unit. But could I do it? Could I kill in cold blood? And what about Vance, the scientist, the guards? The van screeched to a halt outside the chain-link fence of the industrial park. The place was dark, silent, ominous. Out, Matteo ordered. We got out. The driver stayed with the van, engine idling. Matteo led the way to the same building, using a key on a padlock on a side door. It swung open into darkness. Lights are on a motion sensor, Matteo whispered. Stay close. We moved into the vast, dark space. My eyes adjusted slowly. The workbench where the dispersal unit had been was empty. The room was deserted. They're not here, I whispered. Matteo didn't answer. He was staring at a spot on the concrete floor, a dark, wet stain in the faint light from a high window. It looked black. It looked like blood. A cold certainty settled over me. This was a trap. But for who? A voice echoed from the shadows, from the rafters high above. You were right, Matteo. She led them straight to us. Lights blazed on, blindingly bright. I threw up an arm, shielding my eyes. When my vision cleared, I saw them. Vance stood near the far wall, his suit immaculate, his expression one of mild disappointment. The woman in the lab coat was beside him, holding the insulated case, the virus. The 2 armed guards flanked them, weapons not quite raised, but ready, and standing between us and them, holding a pistol pointed directly at my chest, was Derek. Derek. The word was a gasp. His face, usually alight with fervor, was a stone mask. I'm sorry, Ivy. I really am. I thought you might be one of us, but you're just a rat, a government rat. My mind scrambled. Derek? He was with New Dawn. He was the inside man, not just a useful idiot, but the mastermind within the movement. Matteo stepped away from me, putting distance between us. He wasn't surprised. This was the plan, the final test. Bring the suspected mole to the secondary location. See if her handlers follow. See if she breaks. I don't know what you're talking about, I said. The lie automatic. Feeble. The park, Derek said. Fort Tryon Park. This morning, you made a dead drop. We've been watching you since the beginning. Ivy, waiting for you to contact your masters. He gestured with the gun, the device at the museum. It wasn't dye, it was a marker, a radioactive tracer, harmless but easily detectable. If your friends at the DHS raid the museum, they'll find it. They'll think they've found the weapon. They'll stand down, declare victory, while the real weapon, he nodded toward the insulated case, is already somewhere else. My heart hammered against my ribs. The complexity of the deception was staggering. The MoMA job wasn't just a diversion for the public. It was a diversion for the government. They'd played Brennan. They'd played me. And Chloe? I asked, my voice a raw scrape. Does she know? Does she know you're a terrorist? A flicker of something, pain, crossed Derek's face. Chloe believes in the cause, a better world. She doesn't need to know the methods. After tomorrow, the old world will be gone. We'll build the new one together, without the lies. You're going to kill millions of people. We're going to reset a broken system. Derek roared, the mask slipping, revealing the fanatic beneath. The The purge is necessary. The weak, the corrupt, the complacent, they have to go. From the ashes, something pure can rise. Vance cleared his throat. The timetable has moved forward. The courier for the UN insertion was compromised. We need a new one. Immediately. All eyes turned to me. Derek's smile was terrible. You wanted to make a difference. Ivy, here's your chance. You're going to deliver the package. You're going to walk it right into the heart of the beast. And if I refuse, then Chloe dies, Derek said simply. Right after you do, we'll make it look like a murder-suicide, a deranged ex-fed killing her activist sister in a political argument, then turning the gun on herself. Tragic, and it ties up all our loose ends. The ultimatum hung in the cold air. Become the courier of death, or sign my sister's execution order. I looked at the insulated case, the virus. I looked at Derek's gun, at Mateo's cold, expectant face, at Vance's detached professionalism. I had one move, one desperate, stupid move. All right, I said, letting my shoulders slump in defeat. I'll do it. Derek's grin widened. I knew you'd see reason. But I need to know it's real, I said, taking a step toward Vance and the scientist. I need to see it. I'm not walking into that building with a fake. I need to know what I'm carrying. Vance and Derek exchanged a look. Arrogance warred with caution. Arrogance won. They believed I was broken, beaten. A quick look, Vance said, nodding to the scientist. The woman in the lab coat stepped forward. She placed the insulated case on a nearby crate and opened the latches. Inside, nestled in more custom foam, were 6 small, sealed glass vials. They were filled with a clear, slightly viscous liquid. They were labeled with biohazard symbols and a string of alphanumeric codes. A-237, the virus, in its raw, liquid form, before it went into the dispersal unit. It looked so small, so insignificant. Satisfied? Vance asked. Yes, I whispered. And then I moved. I didn't go for my gun. I went for the case. My hand shot out, not for the vials, but for the lid of the insulated case. I slammed it shut, my fingers finding the simple mechanical latch and snapping it closed. At the same time, I pivoted, using my body as a shield, and swept the case off the crate, cradling it against my chest. Stop her! Vance screamed. Derek's gun barked. The shot went wide, pinging off the metal crate. Mateo was already moving, a blur of motion, his own pistol coming up. I didn't think. I ran, not for the door. That was covered. I ran deeper into the warehouse, into the maze of old machinery and stacked pallets. A bullet whizzed past my ear, thudding into a wooden crate. Splinters sprayed my face. She has the virus! Vance's voice, shrill with panic. Do not shoot the case. Their hesitation was my chance. I ducked behind a massive, rusted lathe. The case clutched to me like a child. My mind was a white-hot scream. I had the virus, but I was trapped, and I had maybe 30 seconds before they flanked me. My hand went to the pistol under my coveralls. I drew it, the metal cold and familiar. I'd never fired it in anger. At the range, it was a tool. Here, it was life or death. I peeked around the edge of the lathe. I saw one of the guards moving cautiously along a wall of shelves to my left. Mateo was circling wide to the right. Derek and Vance were hanging back, near the entrance. I had to even the odds. I took a breath, steadied my arm against the lathe, and aimed at the guard on the left. Not to kill, to disable. My father's voice echoed in my head. Aim for center mass. Kiddo, it's the biggest target, but I was a better shot than that. I aimed for his thigh. I fired. The report was deafening in the enclosed space. The guard screamed, clutching his leg, and went down. One threat neutralized. Return fire came immediately. Bullets ricocheting off the ancient metal of the lathe. I ducked back, my ears ringing. Ivy, Derek's voice, roaring with fury. Give it up. You're surrounded. Let Chloe go. I shouted back. Promise me she walks away, and I'll give you the virus. A moment of silence. Then Derek's laugh, harsh and humorless. You're in no position to bargain. A shadow moved to my right. Mateo. He was closer, I spun, firing blind around the corner. The bullet sparked off the concrete floor, making him duck back. Think, Ivy, the case. I had the virus, but it was useless to me. I couldn't let them have it. I had to destroy it. But how? Smashing the vials would release it. I'd die, and maybe it would aerosolize. Anyway, I needed heat. Extreme heat, or a chemical neutralizer. I had neither. My eyes darted around my hiding spot. Old machine oil, greasy rags, an idea, desperate and insane, formed. I set the insulated case down carefully. With my free hand, I grabbed a handful of rags, soaking them in the thick, foul-smelling oil from a leaking drum. I stuffed the oily rags around the base of the lathe, near a bundle of ancient, brittle electrical wires that snaked up its side. A bullet slammed into the lathe just above my head. They were getting braver. I pulled the trigger guard of my pistol back, ejecting the magazine. I had 3 rounds left. I needed a spark. I took one of the oily rags and wrapped it tightly around the barrel of my gun, just behind the muzzle. It was a stupid, dangerous trick I'd seen in a movie. It would probably blow my hand off. I had no other choice. I raised the pistol, aiming at the tangle of wires and oily rags. I took a final breath and fired. The report was different, muffled, choked. A gout of flame shot from the rag-wrapped muzzle, igniting it instantly. The fireball leapt from the gun to the oil-soaked rags at the base of the lathe. Whoosh! Flame raced up the oily path, engulfing the old wires. There was a pop, a shower of sparks, and then the electrical cables caught fire, snaking up them toward the ceiling. I dropped the burning pistol, my hand screaming in pain, the skin red and blistered. I grabbed the insulated case and scrambled backward as fire began to consume the lathe, spreading to the wooden pallets nearby. "Fire!" someone yelled. Vance's voice, panicked. "She's setting a fire." Smoke began to fill the air, thick and black, the perfect screen. Coughing, I low-crawled away from the growing inferno, clutching the case. The virus was stable, but the insulated case had its limits. If the external temperature got too high, it was a risk, but a risk was better than certainty. Through the smoke, I saw figures moving, confused. The guard was trying to drag his wounded comrade toward the door. Vance and the scientist were already retreating. Derek was shouting, firing blindly into the smoke. And Mateo was gone. A hand clamped over my mouth from behind, an arm like steel wrapping around my chest, lifting me off the ground. I struggled, kicking, but his grip was inhumanly strong. "Quiet!" Mateo's voice hissed in my ear. He dragged me backward, away from the fire, into a deeper pocket of shadow between 2 towering shelves. He wrenched the insulated case from my grasp. "Foolish girl, you only delay the inevitable." He shoved me against a metal shelf. The impact drove the air from my lungs. He raised his pistol, pressing the cold barrel against my forehead. "Any last words for your sister?" he whispered. I stared into his dark eyes, seeing my death reflected there. I had failed. Chloe, Mom, the world. Then, from the smoke and chaos near the entrance, a new voice rang out, amplified, authoritative. "Federal agents, drop your weapons. On the ground, now." Blue and red lights strobed through the high windows, painting the swirling smoke in garish colors. The thunder of boots on concrete shouted commands. Brennan, he'd come. My message. The dead drop. He'd found it, and he'd brought the cavalry. Mateo's eyes flickered toward the sound. A fraction of a second of distraction. It was all I needed. I brought my knee up, hard, into his groin. He grunted, his grip loosening. I slammed my forehead into his nose. I felt cartilage crunch. He staggered back, blood streaming down his face. I didn't go for the gun. I went for the case. It had fallen to the floor between us. I dove for it. Mateo recovered faster than I thought possible. His foot came down, not on me, but on the case, pinning it to the concrete. His pistol swung back toward me. A single shot cracked, sharp and precise, not from Mateo's gun. A red flower bloomed in the center of Mateo's forehead. His eyes went wide with surprise, then empty. He crumpled to the ground like a sack of grain. I looked up, standing 10 feet away, her service pistol held in a perfect two-handed grip. Smoke curling from the barrel was Chloe. Her face was a mask of shock, horror, and a fury so profound it chilled me to the bone. She wasn't looking at Mateo's body. She was looking at the insulated case under his foot. She was looking at me, cowering on the floor beside it. Chloe, I breathed. What is that? Ivy, she asked, her voice trembling. What is in the case? The warehouse was erupting around us. Agents in tactical gear were swarming, securing Vance, the scientist, the guards. Derek was on his knees, hands on his head, screaming curses. The fire was spreading, but fire crews were already battering down the doors. But in our little pocket of hell, time had stopped. Chloe, I can explain. I said a virus, she screamed, the words tearing from her throat. Derek said it was a statement, a humiliation. Was that a lie too? Were you lying? Were you all just lying? The raw betrayal in her eyes was worse than any bullet. I had to make her understand. Chloe, listen to me. They were using you, using the movement, the protest, the dye bomb. It was all a cover. They're New Dawn, terrorists. They have a weaponized virus. They were going to release it at the UN. Kill everyone. She stared at me, her brain trying to process the enormity of the lie, the cause she devoted her life to, the man she'd followed, the action she'd just helped perpetrate at the museum. All of it, a facade for mass murder. And you, she whispered, tears cutting through the grime on her cheeks. Were you using me too? Was any of it real? The uniform, leaving the DHS, needing my help. I was trying to stop it. I cried, pushing myself to my feet. I'm DHS. Chloe, I never left. They sent me in to stop this, to protect you. The words hung in the smoky air, the truth finally out, and it broke her. She looked at the gun in her hand, the gun that had just killed a man. She looked at me, her sister, the federal agent, the liar. Her arm dropped. The pistol clattered to the floor. At that moment, agents reached us. They grabbed Chloe, pulling her arms behind her back. Chloe Carter, you're under arrest for... I didn't hear the rest. I was grabbing the insulated case, holding it up. Agent Carter! I shouted, my voice raw. I have the package. A-237. I need a biocontainment team. Now. The world snapped into focus. Agents surrounded me, but kept their distance. Someone shouted for a hazmat unit. Brennan himself pushed through the crowd, his face grim. He took in the scene, the fire, the body, Chloe in cuffs, me holding the case. Report. Agent, he said, his voice flat. 6 vials of liquid A-237. Sarah said, my voice shaking. The dispersal unit location is unknown. The MOMA device is a radioactive tracer, a decoy. The primary target is still the UN. Timeline unknown, but likely imminent. Vance is State Department. He's the insider. Derek Malloy is the cell leader. Mateo, deceased, was the New Dawn liaison. The words tumbled out in a clinical rush. The agent reporting, hiding the shattered human beneath. Brennan's eyes flicked to Chloe, who was being led away, her head down, and the civilian. She was an unwitting asset. Sir, she provided critical assistance. She is not a hostile. The lie was automatic, a sister's last, desperate protection. Brennan held my gaze for a long moment, then nodded. Get that to containment, now. He turned to an aide. Lock down the UN complex. I want every square inch swept, and find that dispersal unit. As a hazmat team in bulky suits approached to take the case, I finally let go. The weight of it, physical and moral, was almost too much. I stumbled, and an agent caught my arm. I looked toward the door, where Chloe had disappeared into the night. Into custody. I had the virus. I had stopped the plot. I'd done my job. So why did it feel like I'd lost everything? The world was safe, but my sister was gone. Time fragmented. The next 12 hours were a blur of decontamination showers, terse debriefings under harsh lights, and the sterile silence of a DHS safe house. I'd handed over the vials. The biocontainment team confirmed it. A-237. The real thing. The dispersal unit wasn't at the warehouse. It wasn't at MoMA. The search of the UN complex turned up nothing. The device, the trigger for the pandemic, was still out there. Brennan's face was carved from granite. The mission was a success and a catastrophic failure, all at once. They'd arrested dozens from the Free Dawn movement. The news cycled the story nonstop. Domestic terror cell broken up, bioweapon plot thwarted. Derek's face, Vance's face, They were on every screen, labeled as traitors and monsters. Chloe's face wasn't shown. Not yet. Brennan was keeping her out of the spotlight. For now, a person of interest, not a perpetrator. My lie had bought her that much. I sat on the edge of a government-issue bed, wrapped in a gray blanket, watching the sun rise over a city that had no idea how close it had come to dying. My burned hand was bandaged. My ears still rang. My soul felt scoured clean. Empty. The door to the safe house room opened. Brennan entered, alone. He held a tablet. He looked older, the lines on his face etched deeper. Carter. Sir. The dispersal unit. We found it. I sat up straight, the blanket falling away. Where? Central Station, in a climate-controlled storage locker rented under a shell corporation 6 months ago. It was armed. Timer set for 1,100 hours today, coinciding with the peak of the morning rush and the opening of the UN Security Council session. My blood ran cold. The heart of the city, the perfect nexus. Is it? Neutralized. Our team took it apart. The virus payload chamber was empty. Empty. The word was a punch. But the vials, we have the vials. We have 6 vials, Brennan said, his voice low. The initial weaponized batch from Kazakhstan was 12. 6 missing vials. Enough to fill the dispersal unit. Enough to kill a city. They moved it, I whispered, the realization dawning. When the warehouse was compromised, they moved the active device. The one in the locker was a backup, a placeholder. The real one is already somewhere else, somewhere with the virus loaded. Brennan nodded, a grim confirmation. We're analyzing traffic cams, satellite footage from last night, but we're running out of time. The UN session starts in, he checked his watch, 3 hours and 17 minutes. Hopelessness, thick and black, threatened to swallow me. We'd been outplayed at every turn. There's more, Brennan said, and for the first time, I heard something in his voice that wasn't steel. It was hesitation. He turned the tablet around. On the screen was a frozen image from a security camera. It showed the interior of a police interrogation room. Chloe sat at a table, her head in her hands. Then the door opened. A man walked in. Not a cop. A man in a cheap suit. He leaned over Chloe, speaking quietly. She looked up, her face a mask of terror. The man smiled. Then he placed a small, black device on the table between them. A digital voice recorder. Brennan tapped the screen. Audio played. The man's voice. Your sister, the heroic agent, left this for you. A confession. Listen. A click. Then my voice. Strained. Desperate. From the warehouse. I'm DHS. Chloe, I never left. They sent me in. To stop this. To protect you. The recording stopped. The man in the suit spoke again. She played you. She used you. She let you believe in a lie. And now you'll go to prison for terrorism while she gets a medal. Unless you want to help us correct the record. Unless you want to tell the real story. The video froze. Who is he? My voice was a dry rustle. A fixer. We're tracking him. But that's not the point. Carter, the point is, your sister heard the truth from you in a moment of crisis. Now she's hearing it packaged as a weapon. They're turning her. They're giving her a narrative. The corrupt government agent who betrayed her own family to frame a peaceful movement for a crime she invented. Their new dawn. Worse, they're political operatives. The other side, they see an opportunity, a scandal to bring down the administration, to gut Homeland Security. They don't care about the virus. They care about the narrative. And your sister is about to become their star witness. The labyrinth had a new wing, one where the monsters wore ties and carried voice recorders. I need to see her, I said, standing. I need to talk to her. You can't. She's in federal custody, and you're compromised. Your cover is blown. Your effectiveness as an agent is. I don't care about my effectiveness. I shouted, the dam breaking. She's my sister. They're going to twist her, use her, and then throw her away. And the real weapon is still out there. What's the play, General? What's your move? Brennan was silent for a long moment. Then he said, we have one lead. The shell corporation that rented the locker. The paper trail is a maze, but it leads back to a law firm, a powerful one, the same firm that represents certain political interests. A connection, thin as a spider's thread. Let me follow it. It's not your job anymore, agent. Your job is to stay here, in safety, while we clean up the mess. The mess is my family. I took a step toward him. You sent me in. You used me. You used her. Now let me finish it. My way. He studied me, his eyes weighing the asset against the liability, the soldier against the sister. Finally, he sighed. The lead is a junior partner at the firm, Elena Shaw. She handles special accounts. She has an apartment in the village. Surveillance has her there now. She's made no moves to run. Either she doesn't know we're coming, or she's waiting for something. Give me the address. I can't authorize. Don't authorize it. I held his gaze. Just look the other way. For 1 hour. A silent battle raged behind his eyes. The by-the-book general versus the man who knew some doors only opened from the inside. He made a decision. He didn't speak. He simply turned the tablet around, tapped it, and slid it across the table toward me. On the screen was an address and a live feed from a traffic camera pointed at a brownstone's front steps. He turned and walked to the door. He paused, his back to me. 1 hour. Carter, after that, your name gets called, officially, for debrief, for reassignment, for whatever comes next. You'll be a footnote, a tool that served its purpose. Then he was gone. I looked at the address. I had 1 hour to find the truth, to find the weapon, and to save what was left of my sister. I left the safe house with nothing but the clothes on my back and the fire in my veins. Elena Shaw's apartment was a 20-minute walk. I made it in 10. The brownstone was elegant, old money. I didn't ring the bell. I picked the lock on the service entrance, a skill from another life, and slipped inside. The apartment was on the top floor. Silence. I moved up the stairs, my senses screaming. The door to her apartment was slightly ajar. A trap. It had to be. I drew the service. Pistol Brennan had left, unacknowledged, in the safe house nightstand. I pushed the door open. The apartment was stunning, all modern art and floor-to-ceiling windows with a view of the city, and it was empty, except for a woman sitting at a sleek glass desk, her back to me, looking out at the skyline. Elena Shaw, I said, my gun leveled. Agent Carter, she said, without turning around. Her voice was calm, cultured. I've been expecting you, or someone like you. Please, put the gun down. You won't need it. Where is it? I demanded, stepping into the room. The dispersal unit. The virus. Gone, she said. Moved last night. A contingency plan. By who? New Dawn. Your clients. She finally swiveled in her chair. She was in her 40s, beautiful in a sharp, calculating way. New Dawn are useful idiots, zealots with a cause. My clients are businessmen. They see a different opportunity. A destabilized world is a profitable world for those with the right assets. Pharmaceuticals, security contractors, reconstruction. The virus was never about ideology. It was about market correction. The cold, monstrous logic of it took my breath away. You're monsters. We're realists, and we're thorough, which is why you're here. She picked up a remote and pointed it at a large screen on the wall. It flickered to life. It showed a live feed of a crowded street, people waving flags, holding signs, the UN Plaza, the protest, Chloe's protest. Your sister's followers are still gathering, Elena said. They don't know she's been arrested. They think today is the culmination of their movement, a perfect backdrop. The camera feed zoomed in, panning across the crowd, then up to the facade of the UN building itself. It lingered on a decorative vent near the roof, partially obscured by a flag. The real dispersal unit is there, Elena said, in the UN's own ventilation system, installed years ago during a security upgrade by a contractor my clients own. It's been there, waiting. The timer is set for the exact moment the Secretary General begins his address. A pandemic, born in the heart of the world's symbol of peace. Poetic, don't you think? I stared at the screen, horror rooting me to the spot. You'll kill everyone, your clients, yourselves. We've been vaccinated for months, she said with a faint smile, as have all key personnel. The rest are collateral damage in the birth of a new economic order. I raised the gun. Turn it off. Now. I can't. The signal is encrypted. The abort code is known by one person only, and he's not here. She stood up, smoothing her skirt. But there is another way, a manual override, a hardwired kill switch inside the unit itself, in the maintenance access behind that vent. She was telling me how to stop it. Why? You want me to stop it? I want you to try, she corrected, because if you're on that roof, in front of that vent, when the authorities arrive, which they will, the moment I send this anonymous tip, you will be the perfect culprit, the disgraced agent, bitter, psychotic, attempting to unleash the very weapon she heroically recovered. Your sister's testimony will confirm your instability, your guilt. A tidy story. The virus is stopped. The real players remain in the shadows, and you become the monster, the final loose end. Tied up. The brilliance of it was dizzying. They got to be heroes for stopping the attack, and I got to be the architect. They'd use Chloe to destroy me, and in doing so, discredit everything she might say about them. Why are you telling me this? I whispered. Because the game is more fun when your opponent knows the rules, she said. And because you'll try to stop it anyway. You're predictable. It's who you are. Now, you have, she checked a slim watch, 47 minutes. I'd run, if I were you. She walked past me, toward the door, as if I weren't even there. I could have shot her, but she was right. Stopping her wouldn't stop the timer. I had one path, one impossible, suicidal path. I ran. The streets were a nightmare of traffic and crowds. I used my DHS credentials to commandeer a parked motorcycle. Ignoring the owner's shouts, I weaved through gridlock, my mind racing. The UN, the roof, the vent. I reached the security cordon, a wall of police and barricades. I leapt off the bike, holding up my badge. Agent Carter, Homeland, emergency access to the roof. A harried-looking captain glanced at my disheveled appearance, my bandaged hand. I have no orders for. The building is compromised. I screamed in his face, the raw terror in my voice finally cutting through. Biological threat in the ventilation system. Get me to the roof or everyone in that plaza dies in an hour. He stared at me, then barked into his radio. A path cleared. I ran through, up emergency stairs, my lungs burning. I burst onto the roof, the wind whipping at me. I saw the vent, exactly where the feed had shown. I ran to it. The cover was bolted shut. I had no tools. I slammed my good hand against it, screaming in frustration. Ivy. I turned. Chloe stood there, at the roof access door. She wasn't in cuffs. She was pale, her eyes red raw, but her jaw was set. In her hand, she held a large, heavy fire axe, its head gleaming in the sun. Chloe, how? They let me go, she said, her voice flat. They said I could help. They said you'd be here, that you were the one. She took a step forward. They showed me the recording. They told me you framed us, that you planted the virus to make yourself a hero. It's a lie, Chloe, every word. The virus is real. It's in there. I pointed at the vent. The timer is set for the opening address. We have to break in. There's a kill switch. She didn't lower the axe. Why should I believe you? You've done nothing but lie to me. I lied to protect you. The words were torn from me. I joined the DHS to protect people, to be the person Dad would have wanted me to be. And yes, I wore the uniform, and I followed orders. And maybe the system is broken, but I never stopped loving you. I never stopped being your sister. Everything I did, even the lies, were to keep you from becoming what they wanted you to be. A pawn, a martyr, a killer. Tears streamed down her face. The man I shot, Mateo, he was going to kill you. I know, you were telling the truth. In the warehouse, I was. She looked at the axe in her hands, then at the bolted vent. The clock in my head was screaming. 30 minutes. What do we do? She whispered. The fight gone from her voice, replaced by a child's need for her big sister to have the answer. We do what Dad would do, I said softly. We run into the fire. I stepped aside, pointing to the bolts. We need to break it. Chloe nodded. She hefted the axe, took a stance, and swung. Metal shrieked. Again. On the fourth blow, the bolts sheared, and the vent cover tore loose. Inside was a nest of machinery, and in the center, a sleek metal unit, humming softly. A digital display glowed. 00:26:17. 16. 15. I reached in, my fingers searching. There, a small, recessed panel. I pried it open. Inside was a single, red switch, the manual override. I looked at Chloe. She gave a tiny, terrified nod. I threw the switch. The hum died. The digital display went dark. Silence, just the wind on the roof. It was over. We stood there, breathing heavily. The enormity of what we'd just done, what we'd just stopped, settling over us. Then the roof access door burst open. Agents swarmed out, weapons drawn. Brennan was at the front. Freeze! Hands in the air. Chloe dropped the axe. We both raised our hands. Brennan's eyes swept from the disabled unit to me, to Chloe. His face was unreadable. Secure the device. Take them both into custody. As agents moved forward, Brennan stepped close to me. His voice was for me alone. "Your name was just called, Carter, at headquarters, for debriefing and for a commendation. It seems you averted a national tragedy." He was offering me the out, the heroic narrative. Take the credit, walk away, let the official story stand. I looked at Chloe, being handcuffed with gentle professionalism. Her eyes locked on mine, full of a confusion that was slowly giving way to a dawning, fragile hope. I looked back at Brennan. My sister comes with me, full immunity, her record wiped clean. She walks out of this with me, today, or there's no deal. And I'll tell every reporter I can find the whole damn story, starting with Project Minotaur. It was mutiny, it was blackmail, it was my last stand. Brennan's eyes turned to flint. He held my gaze for an eternity. Then, almost imperceptibly, he nodded. "She'll be released into your custody, pending review." It was enough. They let us off the roof, separately, in the chaotic aftermath. As hazmat teams swarmed the device and officials scrambled to control the narrative, I stood to the side, watching as an agent removed Chloe's cuffs. She rubbed her wrists, her eyes finding mine across the crowded plaza. They'd spin the story. They'd bury the truth about Vance's clients, about Elena Shaw, about the economic plot. New Dawn and Derek would take the fall. The system would protect itself. It always did, but it hadn't taken my sister. A reporter shoved a microphone in my face as I was led to a waiting car. "Agent Carter, can you tell us what happened? How did you stop it?" I looked past the camera to where Chloe stood, free, under the watchful eye of an agent who was now her protector, not her captor. I looked back at the reporter, and for the first time in a long time, I told a truth that mattered. "I had help," I said. "Then I got in the car and didn't look back."